So good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're well. Some of you will be on half term, some of you won't, some of you are nearly there. So whatever the case, I hope you have some rest. Just introductions. My name is Ross McGill. Been a teacher since 1991, long time. And some of you will know me as a teacher toolkit. I'm your kind of host for this afternoon. And just to make sure you're in the right place, we are diving into English, how to support Coventry pupils and gain greater depth in reading and writing. And we're going to hear a few ideas from some of the teachers at Broadheath Primary in Coventry. And on my travels, I am back out in schools. I've managed to reach Joseph Cash in Coventry a couple of weeks ago. So nice part of the world, some amazing things going on. And I know the context is very challenging. And one of the priorities, particularly for teachers in Coventry schools, the Coventry School Improvement Strategy, 2019-20 was to increase the proportion of children achieving expected standard in reading and those achieving greater depth in writing by the end of Key Stage 3. So there are a few people with me. So rather than me introduce them, I'm going to bring them in one at a time and let them do some little intros, maybe just to make it a bit interesting. Could you all tell us something interesting about yourselves beyond your name and job title? So let's start with Kate. Kate, good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon. My name's Kate. Interesting fact about myself, I have a very, very stupid dog. I've been a teacher for 25 years, but currently I'm working for LBQ. I've written a lot of the English content and I'm a subject and curriculum advisor for LBQ.
Thank you, Kate. Can I ask what type of dog you got? Because I'm about to get a second dog.
She's a lurcher. She's bonkers.
Lurcher. Okay, lurchers are good fun. Thank you, Kate. Keeping with LBQ, John, could you say hello? Tell us something interesting.
Hi, folks. My name's John. I'm the education consultant for the Midlands area, so to speak, and I'm to help evangelise LBQ to all the schools. Interesting fact. So let's keep it Coventry related. So I am running for my sins the Coventry Half Marathon a week on Sunday.
Oh, fantastic.
So, wish me luck with that, and send me some ice for my ice bath.
Can we put you in a spot and can we ask for a time, John? What time are you aiming for?
Oh, gosh, now that's a tough one. Anywhere between 1:45 and 1:50.
All right, well, I wish you all the best with that. Now let's pop over to Julia Mitesh, our colleagues at Broadheath Primary School in Coventry. Julia, introduce yourself. Tell us what you do, something interesting, please.
Hi, so I am one of the 3 assistant heads at Broadheath. This is my 5th year at Broadheath. And I manage the ambassador relationship with LBQ. So I lead maths in school, and that's where we started the use of LBQ, which we've now extended to other subjects.
And something interesting, or was that the interesting fact?
Oh, wow, everything's interesting. You can see behind me some Japanese pictures. We went to Japan on a school trip 2 years ago now, just before the pandemic, which was amazing.
Yeah, I love Japan. Well, fingers crossed we can all go back soon.
I hope so.
Mitesh, nice to meet you, Mitesh. Could you introduce yourself, tell us something interesting too, and also what you do?
Yeah, hi there. My name is Mitesh Patel. I work alongside with Julia. I've been at Broadheath for a little bit longer than Julia, for 6 years. I do a lot of English work at Broadheath with our network of 8 schools. Something interesting, I've worked with Julia for 5 years and I'm still working here. But something more interesting, I do a lot of sailing. Took that up a few years ago and was Commodore for my sailing club. So that was pretty exciting.
Right, fantastic. Well, what an interesting fact from everybody. Thank you very much. Keeps it exciting. So just before we go into the formality, everybody, John's going to just pop a hyperlink into the chat box for you, which has got a little interactive element. It should work on your phone, an iPad, or your desktop. So, John, just give us a shout when you've done that.
Okay, no worries.
And then once I'll give you, let's just say, give you 20, 30 seconds to click that link, everybody. And then we'll move forward. And I guess one of the first key questions we're going to pose to Julia and Mitesh. Well, there it is. So the link's in the chat box, everybody. So have a click on that and fill in the gaps as we go through. So I'll start off with our first question. You know, attainment gap, reading, writing, particularly during COVID. Julia, have the gaps got wider on the ground during the pandemic? You're on mute, by the way. There we go.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, during COVID, it was definitely interesting times. And there was an attainment gap between different cohorts of children. The ones we found, Ross, was a bigger divide between boys and girls.
Right.
Another gap was for our greater depth children. We did find a lot of our greater depth children didn't put in the quality of time into the learning online, which was interesting. We thought it'd be the other way around, but it wasn't.
And have you obviously at leadership, you've probably discussed potential reasons why. Could you just maybe give us an insight into your analysis or why you think that might have been the case?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are varied factors for that. A lot of the boys, I mean, they were very good at using IT. Some of them was a digital divide. So we had lots of resources from the government. We managed to fund some tablets, iPads, laptops for the children use. So that eliminated a lot of it. But the biggest thing was just producing quality work and getting family support from home. And I think children work best when they are with an adult, whether it's a parent member, a family member. So one big thing we did was to work with our parents and enable them to take ownership of how they could facilitate that learning, not necessarily teach the children, but facilitate that and work alongside us.
Mm-hmm. And how were you ready? You know, no one was ready for the pandemic, but digitally with your EdTech equipment, were you in a good position with cloud devices, etc., before March 2020?
The first lockdown, I think we were in a better position than other schools because we use a lot of our website, our blogs for various work, whether it's English, maths, science, etc. So we were quite set up in that manner. So that really supported us. Children were pretty good at logging in, accessing work, videos, etc. However, for the second lockdown, we did evolve our practice. So we did ensure teachers, school adults delivered learning as opposed to maybe holding activities for the first lockdown.
And could you describe your kind of remote learning policy? You know, a lot of schools, obviously, whatever position you were with the EdTech, we had to switch how we conduct assessment, for example, in a remote environment. Give us an insight into where you are now.
Yeah, we're fortunate. We've got lots of hardworking staff at our school, along with families, that supported us in creating a robust remote learning policy. And it wasn't just a standalone policy. It was a policy that we redrafted, edited as the pandemic went on. And that was really important, making it fluid, making it dynamic. One key area that we wanted our children to have access to, or two key areas, was one, strong pre-recorded lessons by the teachers, and also live teaching carrying out by teachers, not just whole class, but individual one-to-one, small groups, and every class had 2 adults. So we were fortunate in that sense, and we managed to do that throughout the week.
And that's lovely to hear. I know a lot of schools weren't in that position, so they caught themselves short, I suppose, but hopefully everyone's in a bit of a stronger place now. I suspect motivation's quite a big factor also. You know, you can have all the devices, all the stuff around you, but if you haven't got that motivation for the students we know this in the classroom, but particularly at home if we don't have that direct contact. So tell us a little bit more about some of the things you've developed to ensure that your students are motivated.
Yeah, I mean, that was a good one. I'm glad you brought the word motivation, because that was something we focused on with our families and our children. But what we realized was a few weeks into the pandemic, certainly the second lockdown, was motivation just changed with individuals. You know, us as adults, you know, some days we're motivated, some days we're not. But one thing we found that really worked with our children during the pandemic and our families was, yes, motivate them wherever possible, but having a routine in place. Because if you have a routine, children, families will do the work routinely, day in, day out, and hopefully that motivation will come through it. So having a clear timetable, expectations, times, how much time they should be spent on each hour, each lesson, and adults to support and facilitate that was more important. So I would say routine was definitely a bigger factor than motivation.
Right. Okay. That's interesting. I'm going to throw a curveball question here. I don't know what the snow is normally like in Coventry, but if we have a snow day again where you can't get to work, what are the plans now, I guess, in a post-remote era?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't think snow days will ever exist as they did in the past. And I can see, obviously, schools can switch very quickly with technology to an online learning for children. So I would like to think that it might be kind of a blend. So the morning work and the afternoon go out and play in the snow and do some kind of active learning in the cold. But yes, it will certainly change.
Okay, thanks for that, Julia. Let's think about getting the reading materials out to pupils. We know it can be varied, engaging, that type of stuff. If I think about EAL students, SEM pupils, okay, how does LBQ deal with that challenge, and how does it support teachers that use your software?
Well, LBQ have got banks of short reads, which are engagingly illustrated, they're well pitched and they're original text, and they are designed to be read for pleasure. They've all got 3 or 4 question sets around the same text. So if you can see my screen.
Yeah, we can, yeah.
We've got banks of fiction, non-fiction and poetry here. So the way we've structured our reading resources is very well aligned with a kind of layered approach, similar to the one described by people called Guppy and Hughes in 1999. And they talk about reading the lines and then reading between the lines and then reading beyond the lines. And I thought that was a really succinct way of sort of layering up those reading skills. So our pre-read question set asks pupils questions about the genre, but mostly about the vocabulary. So it's this knowledge and understanding of vocab that's particularly important for our EAL pupils, so they can access that text and go on to develop those higher level reading skills. So our vocabulary, all our short reads are 10 questions long, and the pre-read one will cover that new or maybe unfamiliar vocabulary and help children really develop their understanding of that text. But then they can go on to, once they've established the understanding of their vocabulary, there's a retrieval question set. And both these skills are reading the lines in a way. So
and is this what you mean by a kind of layered approach?
Yeah, so if you've got pupils who would struggle to access the text, you definitely start them off on the pre-read, and they really make sure that they understand the vocabulary first. Pupils who are quite confident with all those words might begin on a retrieval set, which asks them to find answers from the text directly. But for more confident readers, you might decide to set them the inference question set. So you're moving towards reading between the lines now, where they have to infer, they have to deduce answers. And it's less directly from the text. They have to make decisions about why characters did things. So there's reading between the lines. And for reading beyond the lines, which you're getting towards your greater depth reader now, reading beyond those lines, we're asking children to make connections between texts. We're asking them to compare texts or evaluate them or respond to them personally on a personal level in some way. And we address that by including 2 written questions on each short read, as questions like this one, where there's like an open text answer, or it may ask them to write in their books and respond like that. And we provide a model answer if they need a little prompt. But these are the questions that, are nudging them towards that greater depth understanding there. So I'm going to hand you over to John now, who's going to just show you how easy it is to send these short reads to your pupils.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Kate.
I'll stop sharing.
Okay, great. So, right. I'll try and share my screen now. Thank you very much for that, Kate. Appreciate it. So just picking up from what my colleague said there, Kate, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So I'm in my LBQ. This is sort of the teacher's view. Maybe this is in my PPA time, for example. And I can see there's quite a bit of reading there already. And if I was to click on non-fiction, for example, not only do you have a choice of things like autobiographies and biographies, but it also goes cross-curricular too, into science, history, and geography as well. And if I was to maybe have a little bit of a browse down here, for example, and there's something on, is there life on other planets? And I can click that open. I can see the notes, for example. There's some guides the teacher here as to maybe the appropriateness for the age range. So it's got a Lexile range of 810 to 1000 and what the prerequisites might be. And as Kate has shown here, what I might want to do as well is to just check, is this appropriate for my audience? Can my children read this, and ask some of the questions? And this happens to be on the solar system. So it's not just restricted to English text, so to speak. It could be geography, it could be history as well. And once I'm happy with that, I simply press start. And I've already got a lesson going. As I say, we've already got one going, short reads on Mae Jemison there, which is about the first African-American woman in space. And now I've simply added another text as well there. So if somebody wanted to answer that, for example, and I've logged in here, for example, I've been looking at Mae Jemison, but I could very quickly and easily jump out of there and access this life on other planets as well. You can have up to 3 texts running at the same time. So there's something for everybody. Or if you wanted to do it in sequence, as my colleague has alluded to, sort of pre-read, retrieval and features, for example. One thing I have, one request I've got to all those attendees answering questions, please get a couple of questions wrong as well, because what we want you to do is we want you to see the feedback, which is unique here, because the children get constructive feedback. It not just tells them that they've got something wrong, but it tells them what they need to do to work it out to get it right, which is all of that important feedback and the way to make the most effective progress. Thank you.
Thank you, John. So just for my interest more than anything, in the chat box, if you can tell us if you're familiar with LBQ or your current user, you want to just use it more. I guess one of the weird things in my life as a teacher blogger is I've seen so much EdTech software for the last decade, and LBQ definitely stands out as one of my favorites. I've been familiar with their work for a few years now, and it's a great retrieval piece of software. And as John and Kate have already showed you, kind of some of the stuff that it can already do. I'm going to come back to Julia and Mitesh. I'm really interested in something you've mentioned, Feedback Fridays, and the range of reading material that you offer. And I assume LBQ is one piece of software that you use to enhance the reading. Tell us a little bit more about the diet and differentiation that you give to your children.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, reading for pleasure is a big push that we want for all of our children and our families. And just going back to the lockdowns and things, it was really important to have that quality feedback. So that Feedback Friday with the children, going over quality work, one-to-one, small group with the teacher and the child, so can really pick up on some misconceptions and really focus on that. And that work, not just for English, but across the board, maths, some of the other foundation subjects as well.
And you obviously provide a range of materials. And how long have you been using LBQ?
A couple of years now.
Yeah, I would say 2-3 years.
Yeah, and
so, 3 years. And
from an English perspective, the LBQ, the positives of that was it did have a range of text. It had the ability to inform feedback to the children more or less instantly, which is great. And there's a range of differentiated text there, which teachers, staff can use. Coming back to the classroom, we've used that in a manner that can provide that feedback straight away, so children can make that better than expected progress where applicable for those children, which is great practice for many staff.
I think what's good about LBQ as well is that it's flexible in terms of whether you're working with a small group on an intervention, so you can discuss more around the text, or if you're working the whole class, the teacher still has that visibility of the progress of the whole class and how they're getting on with the task.
And it's something you used throughout the pandemic?
Yes.
Yeah. So just for context for everyone, we're looking specifically at Coventry. We're thinking about greater depth. We've thrown in kind of that progress towards end of Key Stage 2. And I'll come back to the kind of EAL and the SEN pupils. At Broadheath, how do you balance, things that you might do in the classroom, online, managing kids' motivation, well-being? How do you mix it up? If I throw in that word curriculum and all your intent and how you've planned all these different strategies with a particular EAL focus, how do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, our cohorts, our community, we've got about 50 languages with just under 700 children at Broadheath. So language vocabulary is a big, big push right from the minute they enter our schools. And we all know, becoming fluent, skilled, attentive reader is what we want. And we want them to start that earlier stage. And something big that we've done is get parents involved. Get parents to understand the value of language through books, reading nursery rhymes, those children's books at such an early age. And all the data, the research suggests that if they expose that at an early age, they will become strong, confident readers. And with that big push on vocabulary, that language, we want that thread to be embedded right across the subjects. So an example, Ross, you mentioned how that linked to our COVID pandemic remote learning, is we adapted our inset training for staff and demonstrated how they can implement that through live teaching or pre-recorded lessons. So that vocabulary was always a big push. So we wanted that to be visible, we wanted to be clear, we wanted that progress to be evident from that.
And if I zoom in further, maybe we think about the reading gap with your boys and perhaps EAL boys. Paired reading, I've got notes here about the Gangster Granny competition. My boy loves Gangster Granny. Tell us some of the things that you've done, non-fiction to draw your boys in, EAL boys, and hook them into that love of literacy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Gangster Granny was a good one because we know boys the gap was emerging with several year groups. So we had a competition there. They had to read the book and they had to carry out a couple of activities, written activities linked to that. And at first, if I'm being honest, I wasn't too sure what the intake of children entering that competition was, but we had just over 60 and we had to narrow it down to 45, which is brilliant. And again, it's motivating those children, is getting them involved in it, and all the activities was back to the vocabulary, it was to the language. So we have that almost that triangulation from school to home to remote learning, which was great, and something that we do right across the board, isn't it, Julia?
Yeah, definitely. And I think you talked about non-fiction as well. That's traditionally where boys would go to with their reading kind of heads on. So I think promoting that fiction reading as well is really important for us.
We've invested a lot of resources, money into having a range of books, well-resourced library, non-fiction books we were struggling with a few years ago, but we've purchased a lot of non-fiction books. So their environment is one of rich, diverse environment, lots of access to books, for them to take part in conversations, talk about it, and that will link into their reading for pleasure, and hopefully it'll get better.
In my travels to one school in Coventry, actually, they've got the vending machine where you get your rewards and you get your book out of the vending machine, not a bar of chocolate. I love that idea. So if you've not seen that, everyone, just type in, reading book vending machine on Google and you'll be able to find it. Okay, John, how are we getting on with the answers to this survey that you've posted?
Okay, so there's a little activity, a little bit of fun. So the attendees were pretending to be sort of 8 or 9 years old again. And let me just share with you. So this is, for example, the short reads, is there life on other planets? And I can see we've got some answers coming in here. And this is one of the reading texts that the children would typically read themselves. And this is the first one as well. So you can see that one's been quite popular as well. But if I was a teacher, for example, and looking at this, I could make some inferences straight away that, for example, question 2, green is correct first time, amber with a number, it means correct eventually, and red is incorrect. And they've struggled with this one, for example. So if I view the question, I can bring this up, which I can do in the class anyway. we can go over it again and we can remodel, and I can re-ask that question again. And I might say, okay, this time, look over here, folks, and look over here, and just resend that out to everybody, and they should be able to see it on their devices as well. And you might see, for example, this is my Blue Peter screen. That's what it would look like on a whole class type system, and you can see straight away who's understood, where some of the troublesome questions were, for example, and question 7, for example, has caused a few people a few issues, and you know exactly and can pinpoint with accuracy where the support and intervention needs to go.
Now, Kate, you can give us some insights about space. There's been a lot of stuff about space on the news recently, but has it been a popular topic on LBQ?
Particularly during the lockdowns, which just made me think that we all felt we needed to get off this planet and go find another one.
Yeah, interesting. All the space race debate at the moment, climate change, there you go. But let's move on. Now, I'm going to bring things to a close. It's an opportunity for people watching to ask some questions, maybe if we've got the facilities for people to unmute themselves and ask a question live. But John, Julie, Mitesh and Kate are all going to share their own top tip in a moment and explain probably why we know reading is important, I guess, in this Coventry context, EAL students, disadvantages, etc. I guess before I hand over to them, I'll probably just share a couple of mine. I had the pleasure of interviewing Edie Hirsch for my podcast probably about a year ago now, and Don's very famous for cultural capital and has influenced a lot of policy for Michael Gove and Nick Gibb. And one thing that resonates with me in our conversation was, in terms of oracy, that we must make our classrooms a speech community, don't leave oracy to chance. And I think also the things that I've been teaching myself on memory and work in memory and cognitive load, we choose to hinder or support the learning. And I think some of the things that we can do as teachers is to bring curriculum to life by engaging stories. We all love stories, and they've been around for centuries. So I think we need to try harder to thread stories into our lesson plans and help that content stick. So they're my 2 top tips. Maybe others might squeeze in a couple, but let's pop over to Julia first. Julia, what's your top tip for everyone?
So I think mine would be to provide as much breadth as possible to children in terms of reading or ideas for reading, because when parents say, oh, we haven't got a book at home, well, they can read the back of the cereal box, they could read what's on instructions for a recipe, etc. They can go online and read, they can read magazines, comics, etc. But just to make sure that they have that breadth of reading, so they're developing that really rich depth of vocabulary as well. Okay,
Mitesh. Thank you, Julia.
I would say involve the parents as much as you can. Really demonstrate to parents how vital it is reading at home. Right from an early age. Nursery rhymes, reading at bedtime, providing resources, workshops, English workshops, all of those things to really, really benefit that. The earlier we tackle that, the better it is for our children.
Fantastic. Absolutely. Thank you, Mitesh. Kate, how about you?
I did. I've got a list of all the things that a reader needs to sort of read at greater depth. That involves the vocabulary and the inference and being able to predict and argue their point of view. But what stands out most of all for a greater depth reader is the fact that they will read for pleasure. And the Centre for Literacy in Primary Education research in January of this month showed that if you are a literate child who reads for pleasure, this has more of an impact on your future life chances than any other factor. So encouraging reading for pleasure is a social justice issue. If we can give that gift of reading for pleasure to our pupils, it's a job well done.
It is. John, any tips? Thank you, Kate.
So yes, my top tip, if you're using LBQ, whether a current user or you're new to it, is questions 9 and 10 in our reading sets, whether it's English, whether it's science, whether it's geography, whether it's history. Questions 9 and 10 have all got some writing activities in there, and that's when we simply ask, put LBQ down, pick up your pencil, pick up your pen, and hopefully the children have been inspired by what they've read about already, and they've learned some new words, and they can express themselves. And you can see with this question here, would you like to be an astronaut? Give some reasons for your answer. And, you know, it's that kind of breathing in, reading, and breathing out writing kind of idea and approach. That would be my top tip. Have a go at question 9 and 10.
Lovely, John. Thank you. So over to everyone participating. I think, Susan, I saw your virtual hand go up. I don't know if you're still there and want to pose a question. But the offer is now on the digital floor for any questions.
Oh, sorry, that was a mistake. I'm using Sue's computer and I accidentally put my hand up. Sorry.
No worries. Got a question? No? Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Well, please interrupt if you do. So if I just kind of sum things up. So obviously it's been great to connect with people in this specific area. I've been a big fan of LBQ for a number of years now. They're building a community of teachers, particularly in Coventry, who want to get together and share what works in the classroom. In fact, Broadheath are having an event. So Julia Mitesh, could you tell us more about that on the 11th of November? You need to unmute yourself so we can hear.
We're hosting a local cluster event for schools on this side of the city. I think the Ambassador School for the South is hosting a separate one. John, is that correct?
Yeah, they're doing one for maths. You're doing one for English.
Yeah. So on the 11th of November, so you can come over and see LBQ in action. We'll have some children there who are working on a task as well. So you'll be able to see how it works and ask questions. The best way to see how well it works is actually to see it working. It's hard to describe how effective it is.
Right.
Just from,
that's Thursday, the 11th of November, everybody. Yes. Getting together with colleagues in Coventry to see how LBQ works. I'm sure there'll be some biscuits and coffee and tea available too, which is always a bonus. So just to finish, and I'm sure John, if you could put the link into that event on the chat box where it's going to be circulated, I'm sure. But just to bring things together, and plus the video will be circulated with people that haven't been able to watch live. I'm going to pose a question to all our panelists. What book are you reading? So I'll start first. This is a bit of pleasure, but it's also a bit of pain because I'm doing my doctoral degree and I have to read this book on social research methods, and it's a beast. But that's my half-term reading, and yeah, hopefully I'll be able to get closer to completing my doctorate. But that's what I'm reading at the moment. Julia, what are you reading?
So I joined a book club a couple of years ago. So I've read more probably in the last couple of years than I have for years. But the book that's been chosen for this month is called The Midwife, right, which is an amazing story of kind of hardship and friendships and love. And so really good. I'd highly recommend. Do you have
to complete the books within a time frame, or is it just when you...
Yeah, 4 weeks.
Right, okay. Well, that's good homework for you. Good homework. Yeah. Mitesh, how about you? What are you reading?
I generally read a few books at a time. It sounds really mad, but I do read a few books. But one book I am reading is The Never-Ending Story by Michael Ende. Okay. You know, grown up, Never-Ending Story, great 80s classic. So lovely book and film with lots of fancy adventure and things. Yeah. So
I'm a bit like you. I dip out of all these books all the time. You know, it's very hard to keep someone. Kate, yourself?
I love that book, Mitesh. Oh, that's a great one. I'm reading this one at the moment. I've gone Greek.
Wow.
It's a sequel to her first one.
Who's it by? Because I've not seen that one.
It's Pat Barker. She wrote The Silence of the Girls, and this is the sequel to it.
All right.
It's really, really powerful.
John, what's on your reading desk?
So I bought August bank holiday, the Tom Sharp collection. Do you remember Tom Sharp? I love it. I'm reading vintage stuff. It's hilarious. It just has me rolling out of bed late at night for laughter reasons, not for any other reasons. But yeah.
And there you go. And I mean, here's a question for everyone. I'm reading lots of books on Audible. Is that reading or listening? Which one is it?
That's a great question. My son asked me the same question because he's a reluctant reader, and he said, "Does it count?" I said, "Well, I'm not sure."
Through a lot more books though, but yeah, it's that skill of the visual reading, I suppose, a different skill to the listening one. But there you go.
Stories are still going in though, Ross, aren't they? If the story's going in.
So can I just say thank you to Julia and Mitesh for all your wisdom, for your hard work throughout the whole pandemic as well. And I know you've got one more day tomorrow, so one more alarm call, but can I wish you lots of sofa time and lots of bedtime over half term, and get your energies back up and keep up the amazing work. And I'm back in Coventry in November. So I'll see if I can give you a shout. I don't know if it's
Oh
on the
yeah, come and call in.
I'll try and pop in if I can.
Yeah, that'd be great.
There's cash on the way there. And to Kate and John, thank you for your expertise. Showing us behind the scenes LBQ, a fantastic piece of software. And to everybody else watching live or after unrecorded, my name is Ross McGill. Thank you for watching, and I shall see you again somewhere soon. Bye for now, and have a lovely half term. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
I'm going to stay on the line. I'm going to keep doing this digital